Hello, and welcome to another session of Adaptive Physical Education, Georgia Department of Education Community Webinar. My name is Julie Evans. I'm an Adaptive Physical Education teacher for Clark County School District in Athens, Georgia. In this session, we are going to talk about adaptations by disability. These are generic descriptions and adaptations and modifications. Keep in mind that each student is very unique and should be treated as such. We always want to promote independence regardless of skill ability. A huge proponent or a huge component of adaptive physical education is also education of fellow students and staff involved in the class. And I have no idea where this quote came from, but I have always enjoyed it. Even if a student cannot do all the steps in a task or an activity, he or she can likely learn at least one step and maximize his or her participation. For visual impairments, you need to have a home base or a place where your student should always have access to as a familiar spot for warm-ups, taking attendance, listening to instructions. Avoid overprotecting the student. Let them be independent. Anchoring, if possible, have a student wait near a wall or other landmark so they aren't floating in space. For locomotor movements, allow the student to trail the wall when performing locomotor movements like running. If and when you change the space, be sure to tell the student with the visual impairment and let them explore the space before class if possible. When using sound sources, use objects that beep or buzz as targets or destinations. This works best outside just because the sound echoes off the walls of a gym. Guided running. Find peers who are trusted by the student and teach them how to guide run using a tether. It's also good to have a few different guide runners to rotate through. Guide wire running. Set up a guide wire along a wall or outside using hooks and a tight cord, or tight cord in the wall or a weighted down upright. Use a carabiner and a length of cord for the student to hold onto while running. It's also a good idea to tie warning knots 10 feet before the end of the wire on either side. And provide physical assistance only if necessary and with permission. You don't ever want to startle the student by just grabbing a hold of them. Make sure you ask permission that it's okay for you to help them. Cerebral palsy is a condition resulting from a non-progressive lesion of the brain before, during, or soon after birth. It can involve 1, 2, 3, or all 4 limbs. You want to be sure to promote independent movements, walking or any movement of the hands, arms, or legs, and become familiar with any assistive devices the student uses, whether it's a wheelchair, a walker, a gait trainer, orthotics, crutches. There are many different devices. It's always a good rule of thumb to kind of know how to lock the brakes, how to assemble or disassemble the piece of equipment, and it's best to learn that from the student. Activities, modifications, and adaptations. Emphasize stretching. Use balloons or beach balls. Modify rules or games. Try to end an activity before the student gets frustrated. Enlarge targets. Use an extension for tag games such as a foam noodle. Use large scooters and create a boat on the scooters. If you have someone who is fairly involved, meaning most or all of their body, focus on reaching, grasping, and pushing. And use slower locomotor patterns for regular education students, such as bear crawl, crab walk, and hopping. so that the student with cerebral palsy is able to keep up. Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a chromosomal disorder that occurs when an extra chromosome, chromosome 21, is present. There's no standard profile of a person with Down syndrome, and not all people who have the disorder have severe cognitive impairments. Some things to keep in mind for individuals with Down syndrome is atlantoaxial instability, which is a common secondary condition and should be addressed by a medical professional. It is instability between the first two vertebrae in the neck, and should be cleared before doing any kind of sport or activity that puts pressure on the head or neck. Hypotonia is also a secondary condition, which is increased flexibility. And when not provided an appropriate physical fitness program, areas of concern for individuals with Down syndrome are lack of strength, poor cardiovascular endurance, and low muscle mass. Some activity modifications and adaptations for individuals with Down syndrome: be positive, positive, positive. Avoid stress to the neck area. A highly structured environment. Brief instruction with visual instructions and demonstrations. Try to set them up for success and be consistent with motivation and expectations. Autism. Autism is a developmental disability that typically appears during the first 3 years of life, a result of neurological disorder that affects functioning of the brain. Autism impacts the normal development of the brain, especially in the areas related to social interaction and communication skills. Individuals with autism typically have difficulty relating to objects and events and a great need for sameness, which makes them upset if objects in their environment or time schedules change. Children with autism may not play with toys in the same manner as their peers and may become fixated on specific objects. Some adaptations and modifications for individuals with autism: visuals, station signs, picture stories, social stories, a predictable structured routine, including a warm-up, activity, and closure, smooth transitions, stations, allow for extra time, eliminate excessive stimulation. Vigorous exercise helps reduce stimming for some students. Duplicate teaching strategies of the teacher. Applied behavior analysis, verbal behavior approach, token system, and reinforcers that are student dependent. Not all reinforcers work for all students. Students in wheelchairs. My number one thing is ask the student. Ask them what they would like to do, ask them what they can do, ask them how they would like to modify or adapt the activity for themselves. Get them out of their chairs, use adaptive equipment, put them on mats, just a different position. Always keep in mind safety first. Use stationary or slower moving balls. Vary distances. Use longer, lighter equipment, and lower goals, meaning basketball goals. Students with multiple disabilities can cause severe educational problems that cannot be accommodated in a program solely for one impairment. For example, severe cognitive impairment and cerebral palsy. Physical disabilities can mask normal intelligence. Children with intense physical, mental, or emotional problems may need highly specialized education, social, psychological, and medical services. May experience severe speech, language, and or perceptual cognitive problems, may have abnormal behavior, may be medically fragile, but they absolutely can learn. Some activity modifications and adaptations for individuals with multiple disabilities promote independence. Be patient, be flexible, use brightly colored equipment, use visuals for boundaries, polyspots, cones, or rope, break tasks into smaller steps, modify equipment, use physical and verbal prompting or assistance, provide immediate feedback, self-paced activities such as stations and task cards usually work very well, and give lots of positive reinforcement and praise, verbal and physical. Individuals with hearing impairments, make sure you determine a start and stop signal with those students. Use visual demonstrations. Stand still when giving directions. Allow the student to stand with back to the sun when giving directions so they can see your face better. Make sure the student can see your lips. Learn some basic sign language, and be aware of any balance issues. This is another picture that I have stumbled upon of another way to adapt a basketball goal. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at the email listed here. Have a great day.